Hmm. Oh, I see. Oh. Can you hear me? Oops. Welcome, everyone. I'm Robin Galinsky, and this is Dr. Dennis Becker. We are with the Speech Improvement Company, Mindset Communication, and this is our podcast, Outwitting the Manipulator. Dennis has discovered a pretty juicy topic for today, so I'll go ahead and let you introduce that, Dennis.
Thanks. Juicy is an interesting way to describe this because it's, well, juicy. Okay, I'll accept that for now, but it's interesting and it's serious and it's dangerous and it's manipulation.
And
That's
it's
why we want to talk
insidious.
about it. And it's insidious. It's
You might have to
insidious
look that
manipulation.
word up, but it just basically means it's everywhere, like air.
Yeah, exactly. Because it deals with social media. Yep. We talked about it before and how insidious and how dangerous and how impactful social media can be uh, with manipulation and your manipulator, how it can use it, he or she can use it, and how it can become a tool, a tactic of manipulation. Well, today we want to talk about something that I thought was rather shocking when I read it this past week. And I just thought I had to share this with you guys, and we'll talk a little bit about it and how it relates to you, because this is the study was done by Oxford University in England. It was done by an organization called the Oxford Internet Institute. So they study social media and the impact that it has around the world. That's what they do. Well, they came out with a report this week that were the results of the study that they've done over the last 3 years or so. And this is their latest report. What they did was they reviewed and observed and carefully reviewed manipulation in well, let's not be judgmental. They reviewed social media in 80 different countries. Okay. What they found out was about manipulation and the way it was used in social media, that in all 80 of the countries, social media showed a great threat to that country and to the democracies of that country. 80 countries, 80 of them are all doing it. Now, what does that mean? Well, let's be a little bit more specific about it. We'll report the rest of this survey a little bit more, and we'll talk about it. This, these were shown, these campaigns were shown to exist in every single one of the 80 countries. Now, what's interesting about it, to me, well, that's interesting, first of all, that every country was using social media to manipulate its listeners, its viewers. This has become a common strategy. This is even worse. It's a common strategy in 93% of all of those countries. That's 76 out of or so out of 80 countries. It's common practice to use social media to manipulate the listeners and the viewers. Now, This to me was very disturbing, Robin, and I wanted to bring it up because we've often, we talk about how people get manipulated by other things and other people and other stuff and so forth. And we've mentioned in one or two of our other previous podcasts about the impact that social media has and the fact that people can be being manipulated through social media, or the social media can be used to manipulate them. All right. This was being done on a worldwide scale. Every single outlet that they looked at them in 80 countries. Okay, I think that's enormous. And I want
Okay.
to talk a little bit about how it impacts the people that we're working for and with. Go ahead.
So this is not news at all. This is nothing new. And social media is not anything new. This has been going on since the beginning of time, and a tool at the means and disposal of another human to manipulate another human is going to be used. Now, social media, I looked at the study, Dennis. It doesn't bother me at all because of course social media is being used to manipulate. I mean, of course, anybody who doesn't think that is delusional. The important thing about it is that, well, there's a number of important things. One is you say it's being used, or people, who's the it? Okay, so it's being used by individuals. It's being used by Google, YouTube, Apple. It's being used by corporations. It's being used by political groups. It's being used by governments. So it's being used across the board by everyone, and it's being used to pit people against people. So the going thread, and I listen to a lot of different news sources. So I don't just do legacy media. I listen to alternative views. In fact, I'm very proud of the fact that every day I get political messages from both sides, the Democrats and the Republicans. They both think that I'm voting for them. And I'm not voting for either, but that's a different point. I pride myself in the fact that I'm on both of their radars because I want to hear everything on both sides. But the thing that's different is that it follows you in your pocket. The thing that's different is the data on you, everything you search, everything you look at, everything you like, everything you don't like, every comment you make is collected by a sophisticated algorithm and used to gently, insidiously nudge you in whatever way the powers that be want you nudged. So it is almost impossible for, and I will say one more thing. Okay, so yeah, that's going on with it's going on with smartphones and social media, but this has always gone on, Dennis. You know, the Madison Avenue, the advertisers, you know, if you've watched Mad Men, if you even have lived and paid attention, we've always been manipulated by corporations and advertisements. We always have. The thing that's changing is the evolution of manipulation. This is why I think our work is so important, Dennis, and why us asking these questions and talking about this is so important. It's escalating at an increasing rate. So, you know, there are a few animal species that manipulate other animal species, like the fish in the bottom of the ocean who pretends to have a fake worm to pull fish into its mouth. And there's birds that, you know, stick their eggs in other birds' nests so they don't have to raise it themselves. So there's a little bit of manipulation, and as animals evolve, they become more. They're able to manipulate their environment. But we, the human species, that we're at a whole new level. And a lot of people don't even realize it. And that's the most disturbing thing to me. And I think that's probably what you're trying to point out. But that I found that study to be that's what I wanted to say after. And also I found it to be very vague. And also you have to be very, very careful. When you start hearing all of a sudden this buzz, and then you hear it everywhere, every little podcast you listen to, every little newspaper article, every little thing, all of a sudden you hear the same thread that's permeated everything. Usually, all of a sudden, There's a proposed new legislation after that happens. And this is my big concern with this, is there are proposed legislation to control speech, to censor speech, for someone to be the decider of what's good speech and what's hate speech. And I think this is a slippery slope, very
Okay.
slippery slope.
Okay. It's indeed a slippery slope. And for us to get into it, may be slippery for us too.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
said something that I thought was very interesting that was cited in the study. And by the way, I didn't think it was a study at all. What
I
I liked
know.
about it, what I
I
liked
did.
about it, what I do like about it is that it puts numbers to all of this. We've kind of known this about social media, but this puts hard and fast numbers to it. One of the interesting things that it cites that you mentioned was that this is increasing. They do this every year. From one year to the next, there was a 15% increase in the amount of this being done. So, I
Well,
mean, it's
Dennis, it goes
absolutely
back to what
increasing.
we say. Any behavior that's rewarded is going to increase.
Yeah, yeah,
So this
yeah.
behavior, being manipulative on social media, that is they succeed. They get
Mm-hmm.
rewarded. They have nothing to lose for the most part. They're anonymous.
Mm-hmm.
So why
Well,
wouldn't it increase? And I think with
well,
AI, it's not only going to increase,
yeah,
it's going to be much more
yeah.
automated.
It's going to be tough. It's going to be much harder to, at least at the beginning stages, it's going to be a lot harder to decipher who and what or where and what is true. So that's very true. This is why the work that we're doing, I think, becomes even more critical to people to be able to understand, to be able to see it, to be able to cite it. So whether it's coming at you through AI or it's coming at you live, the tactics that we've been talking about are still going to be essentially the same, just covered with a little bit more gooey stuff so that you can't quite see it, but it's still the same. Blaming is the same. Use of surrogate is the same. Gaslighting is going to be the same. All of these 24 of the things we cite, they're all going to be basically the same, except covered with a little bit more clarity, a little bit more sneaky stuff. This is why I want to discuss this not only, as we do from week to week for the individual, but this is a universal issue. It's going to become even worse, I think, which is why I think what we're doing becomes even more important. Because as we've suggested with individuals, when you're suspicious, even when you're not doubting, what was that? I mean, did she say, what does she mean? If you feel like that about someone, something that's happening to you, don't ignore it. Don't ignore it. And we're saying the same thing with all the stuff that they're hearing on social media. Don't ignore it. And we've
I think you
suggested,
also have to check in and say, does this make sense? And in addition to that, you always have to ask, who's going to benefit
yeah,
from whatever it is, this
yeah.
divide, this, and sometimes it really stretches the imagination of a normal person because you cannot even imagine that somebody would be so
Mm,
evil.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And it's time to start imagining and believing that this is possible because it's happening. It's happening.
mm-hmm.
And including Dennis, I also want to bring up because, you made me think of something, which it's not social media, but it's almost in a way worse, if you can imagine. And that is the fact that, and you don't have to look far for this data, the obesity in our country, how the obesity is off the rails and it's increasing. That's also increasing at an increasing rate. And what goes hand in hand with the obesity is the processed food industry and the food companies that have hired scientists and engineers in labs to engineer our food to create cravings. I remember reading a story a long time ago, and this seems very unsophisticated now. They're much more sophisticated now, but back in the day when Coca-Cola started adding salt, very high sodium to their drinks, because the more you drank, the thirstier you got. So you would drink more and get thirstier. Okay, so that's just one tiny example, but they're so sophisticated now that they've actually hacked our gut biome. So they call it the gut brain now, and they're learning so much about the delicate balance of our gut biome, But these bacteria that are good bacteria in our gut actually communicate with our brain up here.
Mhm.
And they're
Mhm.
very connected and they send signals and they are able to send cravings. So when they learned about this in the labs of the corporations, they started creating food that would increase the bad bacteria. I'm using those for those words for simplification. There's thousands of different kinds, but
Mhm.
they create a chemical reaction to send a message to our brain to make us crave those foods. Because you look at people who are really obese, and the first thing that springs to mind is out of balance. For me, it's like something's not right. It's out of balance. No amount of advertising and anything is going to make me think that's healthy and normal. And maybe it's a product of when I was born because we didn't have as many obese people in the 60s and the 70s. Maybe I'm dating myself, but it just seems like something's out of balance. And when you hear the person can't breathe, can't walk very well, they don't age, they die young. I'm sorry, but that means something's wrong. But
Okay.
it's not their fault, is what I'm saying.
All right.
They
Okay. It's
have
not
been
that,
a
well,
victim.
that's debatable. It's not their fault. We're not going to go down that path. It's not their fault. I want to go back to
Well, I mean,
a
in the
phrase that
sense
you
that
used. I want to go
they've been
back to a phrase.
hijacked.
I'm not going to go that way with you. I'm going to talk about something you said a little earlier, which was that scientists they engineer creative ways. That was the phrase you used. They engineer creative ways. Now, ladies and gentlemen, that's just fancy language for they manipulate.
Of course.
Engineer creative ways is just fancy way of
And
saying
I don't
they
remember using the word
manipulate.
creative, but this is
Manipulate the way we think, the way we react, the way we feel even. And what Robin's pointing out is that it can often be very unhealthy, even negative for us to feel this way, to have these reactions. So
yeah.
this is why we're talking about it today, because it is simply another form of manipulation, just in this case on a much, much grander scale. And in a way, a much slipperier slope, a much slicker way, because we're
Mhm.
not thinking about it. And it gets we're not even talking about how they cover this stuff up, the emotion that they build around it.
Yep.
We're not even talking about that. I mean, we've talked about that in the past, the way things are presented and they're so beautiful and they're so tasty for you and blah, blah, blah. We're not even
Mhm.
talking about that. Underneath of it, it's still creative engineering. It's manipulation. And what we're urging you to do is like we urge you with your manipulator, that individual that you're concerned about. We're urging you to do the same thing on a larger scale. This study that we were reporting on today talks about 80 different countries, and they all do it. Every
It's
single
a
one of the
hundred
countries does
percent
this.
of the countries. I
100%.
guarantee you, it's a
Okay.
100%. There's no
Now,
way
well,
that
they're talking
there's
about, they said it was in 93% of everything they do on those stations. But you may be right. Maybe it's 100%. But we'll say at least it's a huge majority of the time that they spend in those countries is spent on social media manipulation. Okay, now what do you do about all this stuff? I think we all kind of know it. The Oxford Institute, Internet Institute, has put some numbers around it for us. We kind of all know it. We kind of all accept it. We believe it. So what do you do about it? I mean, Robin is right about processed foods and about, I mean, how can one person have anything to, what can you do to impact that? How do you stop it? All right. You may not be able to stop it. You may not be able to stop it, the big volume of it, but you can protect yourself. You can learn how to identify this stuff and protect. You may not be able to stop it, but you'll be able to protect yourself from it. Now, the last time we talked about social media, and in fact, we've said it in other settings, there are three things that you should be able to do when you're even suspicious or you feel like this is wow, that's amazing. You think it's too good to be true. There are three
it
things that you
is.
can do.
If it feels too good to be true, I guarantee you it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah, yeah. And you're going to find that. I mean, there's so many examples we could get into right now, and I don't want to dedicate our time to doing it because it's everywhere. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. Okay, I mean, I just have to give you this one. When they advertise automobiles, How many times do you see those automobiles being driven alongside of a beach, up a mountainside, through a desert, right? Always with people who are excited and love it. How many people drive like that? What's the realism of us all driving that way? It's manipulation. They want you to think about that. They don't want you to think about the specifics of the torque and the mileage and all. No, they want to manipulate the way you feel. That's what manipulators do. They want to control the way you feel. I don't care if you're being manipulated by one person or by one huge network. They're trying to control the way you feel. That's what manipulation is all about. And we're suggesting that to protect yourself at the very least, do these three things. Now, I've mentioned it before. I will walk through them quickly because we've done them before, but we want you to remember them. When you see and hear something like the things that Robin's been talking about or that have been pointed out as social media, on social media, when you feel, even think, could that be right? Is that when you even feel suspicious? Three things. First, be curious about it. Is that real? How do they? I wonder if it's possible that who benefits by all of that? That's the first thing we want you to do, to be curious about it. Don't just accept it. Second, have the courage to act upon your curiosity. How do you do that? That's the third thing, and that is ask questions. So be curious, have the courage to ask questions about what you're hearing, what you're seeing, what you're feeling, what you think is like, it's a little odd. Well, that makes me feel like, be curious enough to not just take it, accept it, say, oh, well, no. Be curious enough to have the courage to ask a question about it. Those are the three things that we're giving you to protect yourself. Now, you can't protect yourself against worldwide manipulation, but you can protect yourself about your own through your own behavior, or your own condition. That's
You
what we're
can't
talking
really ask questions to social media posts,
It's hard. No.
but you can control what you're watching and what you're listening to.
Yeah.
And I think it's when we talk about whether you're ingesting volumes of processed food, which are toxic, or volumes of sounds and images that are toxic. This comes back to the other things that we've talked about is you're 100% responsible for your own health and well-being, your own joy, your own life. And therefore, part of that responsibility is, what are you breathing? What are you eating? What are you listening to? What are you reading? And if it's not in alignment with the type of joyful life that you want, then stop. Now, I have an asterisk on that, Dennis, because I will say that is a ridiculously simplistic statement when the sophisticated manipulative tactics are being applied to us in such an insidious way that it's very, very difficult. Just stop eating processed food. Well, I'm craving it, and I can't, I've been hijacked. My free will has been hijacked. That's what's happening with you. That's what's happening with you, and you're being assaulted. And I don't even know what other ways, but I'm certainly, if they can do it with the air we breathe, they will do it. Okay. And I say I don't know who the they is, but there's plenty of theys out there that want control. Okay. So what I would say to you is anything that you feel like is controlling you, whatever that is, whether it's a sugar, alcohol, a friend, a boyfriend, of social media app like Instagram, because you look up, I did this the other day before I lost 45 minutes. How are you going to get in control of it? This is where you have to think. First, you have to acknowledge that something's controlling you. And then you have to take a dramatic action. And usually the dramatic action is a break. And Dennis, I don't know if you've found this to be true, but I found somebody who's in a very coercively controlling relationship. If you can get them away from that person for a week or 2 weeks, somehow get them away where they can have their own thoughts, they can get a break for a minute to just put things together, they can usually get away. Same goes for, toxic food, alcohol. If you could just get enough of a respite where you can tap back into your own control and your own decision-making ability, sometimes that's enough. Even if you go back to it, it stays with you. You remember
Now,
what
when
it
you get
felt
away,
like.
the idea of getting away doesn't mean, you can get physically away. That's great. And of course, in some cases, that's the only thing you can do to really save yourself, protect yourself.
Yeah.
But by getting away, it means get away from it. Get away from
Yes.
this. Do that.
Yes.
Okay. Get away. Take a vacation from it. That's when you get curious. That enables you to be curious. If I'm doing this, blah, 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 it's coming back. But if I do this,
I don't have a moment to put it together or even
if I
reflect.
do that, if I can get
Well,
away,
Dennis, this is a
I can be
podcast.
curious, and that gives me the
He's putting his
courage.
hand over the screen for
Yeah,
those.
yeah, yeah. Well, that's what I'm making the point.
I know, but the
It gives me
listeners don't know that you're doing that.
it gives me the space to be curious and question myself, not just question, like Robin said, we can't just question Instagram, question a political party. You're not going to get anywhere that way easily. You could do it, but it's not going to get easily. But you can be curious enough about it to question yourself. Have the courage to look at yourself and say, why the heck? Why do I feel that way? What is it what do I get out of that? Who am I? Who's being benefited by ask yourself those critical questions. That will help you to protect yourself. You'll say, well, I don't know, maybe that's not something. You will learn how to protect yourself. And that's another reason why we're here. We'll give you the methods and the means to be able to protect yourself from those kind of things.
None
But
of us
first
are
of all,
immune. We live with this, and Dennis and I are not immune. Dennis, I
no, of
know.
course.
I know I have been sucked into buying some cheap piece of plastic that was demonstrated on Instagram. I've made it my own personal policy now. I refuse to buy anything ever with Facebook or Instagram. If something looks interesting to me, I write down the website, I wait 48 hours, and then I'll go to the website. And if I still
There you
feel that
are.
way, I'll buy it.
There you
Because
are.
so much of that is about supplies aren't going to last. This offer is only available
Yeah.
now. What we talked
Act
about in one
before
of our
midnight.
podcasts, sense of
Oh, yeah.
urgency. You got to
Yeah,
act
yeah.
now. You got to act now. You got to act
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah. Or the fear one. And if you don't do this, folks, 8 million people are going to listen, it's everywhere. It's
Or
in all
ping,
the
Judy in
news, all
Antonio,
the
Texas
social
just
media.
bought one, and Bob in
It's
Tuscaloosa, Oka, wherever it is, he just bought one, and you go, oh, well, everybody's buying one except me.
okay. All right. All right. You can see we're both getting upset about it because we're so annoyed by
I hate that crap. I hate it.
how how powerful
And
this
it
thing is.
works. It
We're
works.
we're of course worried about it with you and with your individual manipulator. We know that, and we're here to help you with every single one of those or that group. But we're also drawing your attention to the fact that it's everywhere. We are all engulfed in it. You can hardly get away from it. Social media, radio, television, newspapers. It's everywhere. And manipulation is a major part of what you're receiving. I'm not saying it's all nefarious. I'm not saying it's all nasty. It's nasty when it controls you. I don't care what it is, but it's maybe done for reasonable reasons.
Usually it's just
And we're
to
not
take
getting
your
into
money.
that. We're
Usually it's
not
just
getting into
about
all
getting
of
your
that.
money.
Could there be some reasonable people behind some of it to do something? Maybe, but we're not talking about that. We want you to be careful and be cautious. What's the three things? Be curious. Have the courage to ask the questions. If it's of yourself, what makes me? Or if it's of somebody else or the source, be curious enough, have the courage to ask the question that's going to give you some self-protection. That's the whole point of this.
I
That's why
also
we want you to pay
remind
attention to what we're saying.
the questions. So let's just talk a little bit about questions. We only have about 5 minutes left, but so the questions, there are sophisticated answers to questions that pull you in deeper.
Oh,
When
yeah.
I think about sales, when I think about a cult, Dennis, somebody who's recruiting to a cult, they have an answer to every question you
Oh, yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
So in that instance, your curiosity and your questions could be stepping into quicksand that pull you down deeper.
Mhm.
So just along the line of questions, you want to be aware of when you get great answers to every question
Mm-hmm.
that feel a little slick, like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, okay, all right. Oh, okay,
Mm-hmm.
well, what about this? Oh, and they give you another, oh, okay, all right.
Mm-hmm.
And everything is just neat and tidy lining up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that should blow this up to you asking a bigger question of,
Mm-hmm.
is there anything in life that's so neat and tidy? Is there any simple solution in life to anything? No, there isn't. We are complex species with very complex problems. There is no button you're going to push, pill you're going to take, cult you're going to join that's going to solve all your problems. None. That doesn't exist. So if it starts adding up that way because you've got a very sophisticated sales like
Mm-hmm.
recruiter in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
now you really need to have your alarm bells going off and realize that nothing's so neat and tidy. So
Yeah.
something's
Yeah.
awry.
Yeah. It
So
is.
there's so much, Dennis. Like, I'm
It
glad that
is
we
a
do
lot,
this every
Robin, and
week.
that
There's just go on and on and on. I just think deeper and deeper and deeper of more and more things.
this is why we're here, folks, because we know that you are in that deeper mess. We know
I
you're
want you to
stuck in that. It's
think,
how do you even stop to get the opportunity to think, let alone
get
what to
yourself
think?
away so you can
It's
think, get
as much
some
as
distance.
get away, get away. If and I don't mean physically. If you can get away
It
physically,
might
that's
be.
even better.
Put your
That's
phone
even better.
down, turn it
Yeah,
off, get away.
yeah,
Get
yeah.
away.
Give your mind, give yourself the gift of silence and solitude. Give yourself those gifts. Don't let those things be overriding and dominating and commanding and demanding your time. Give your sense of self a sense of silence and solitude. This will help you to increase your curiosity, develop the courage to ask the kind of questions that will make you feel better, more self-protected, more informed,
And
so
focus
that
on yourself.
you won't be surprised that a manipulator can't get at you easily. This is going to help you, folks. That's why we're saying these things to you. And I know it may sound a little bit repetitive now and then, but look at where we started. 80 countries, and every single one of them are doing these things. 93% of everything they do every day is manipulation. It's all over. And you need the voice sort of knocking on your brain constantly, like we are, to help you with this sort of a thing. That's why we're here every week. So, Robin, last minute notes because we have to sign off. We're up to time.
I think it's really, I think what we're really doing is teaching people how to think critically. I think we're losing that. So, yes, ask
All
questions,
right.
but understand questions can get you in deeper. So you really need to think about the answers.
Mm-hmm. And remember, when you don't have time to even think about the answers, look what we've suggested in the book.
Take the time.
There are specific things that you can say, words. We'll give you the words even that'll get you out of the moment, give you some time to think. In the book, we have words and we have facial expression, everything you need in the moment, even if you can't think about it. And remember, we have workshops coming up. So come to the
Subs
workshop. We'll work with you one-to-one individually. We'll practice it and show you, let you know how to do these things. This is why we're here, to help you with this thing called manipulation. However it's coming at you, and even if you can't control it, it's still coming at you, as we said today.
Okay, so go
So
to the website, Outwit in Real Time. You can subscribe there. Outwit, OUTWIT, in real time, all one phrase. And subscribe there and also look up the workshops there. Otherwise, thanks for listening.
And she said it. She's Robin Galinsky, and I'm Dr. Dennis Becker. Thanks for listening, and bye for now.